Some supporters of the president are expressing disappointment in his first 100 days in office. Here's a listen at some remarks from one popular pro-Trump podcast.
Overall, first 100 days, I give it a C+, and I get there this way. An A- on the plan, but a C- on the execution. I thought he got too many things going at once, picking on the Fed, Powell, but I gave the plan an A, but the execution got messy. And so overall, I give it a C+.
I thought that the first, month was awesome. He was signing all these executive orders. He's doing his thing. And then April 2nd, Liberation Day, where he liberated America of like $5 trillion worth of wealth. And nobody saw it coming. So I don't understand the methodology for what he was doing with Liberation Day. It would have been better if he just dressed up as Liberace Day and started doing a samba dance or something like that. All right, cool, we'll deal with that. But Liberation Day has backfired.
But results, it's C-. To me, they're great right now, C- on results. First 100 days. When you go purely with results, we were told day one, there's going to be peace with Russia and Ukraine. It's day 100. There's no peace there.
It's worse, they're fighting.
Of course, I thought there was going to be a deal being done there. It's a C-. And I voted for this guy in 16, in 20, and 24. Gladly. Happy I did. And it's a C- today.
All right. To that second guy, nobody saw it coming. Literally, what news were you watching or listening to? Because it's all we talked about. How bad it would be when the tariffs hit. I mean, nobody saw it coming. I'm stunned at these pro-Trump billionaires and big CEOs we were talking about yesterday who are shocked by this. That's actually irresponsible, since it's what you do. But to the point we're making here, Wall Street Journal columnist William Glaston has a piece entitled "Trump Hemorrhages Support 100 Days In." In it, he writes in part, quote, "By a margin of 4-1, Americans want a government that solves problems carefully while minimizing mistakes, even if this means proceeding more slowly than would be the case if collateral damage were ignored. Americans don't believe that the administration should ignore Supreme Court rulings, eliminate programs enacted by Congress, or impose tariffs without congressional authorization. Due process may sound abstract, of concern only to lawyers and educated elites, but Americans understand and support it. By large majorities, they believe that green card holders and other legal residents are entitled to broad procedural protections, including the right to be informed of the charges against them, to have a fair trial, to present a defense, and to appeal court decisions. They even support certain protections for illegal immigrants. 57% say the government should be allowed to deport them only if evidence is presented and evaluated in a hearing. And that's reflected in a lot of things that Molly's finding as well.
Yes, let's turn right to Molly's new piece in Vanity Fair with the title, "Some Good News. Americans are rejecting Trumpism." Molly, you write in part this: "Autocrats want you to sink into despair and immobility, to see no light at the end of the tunnel. But we can already see some slivers of light. And yes, there is reason for optimism." That's not to say pushing back against Trump's extreme agenda is going to be easy. And there's still quite a long way to midterms, never mind the 2028 election. But it's heartening to see that a majority of the American people reject what this administration is doing on a host of issues. Molly continues, "It's clear from polls and protests that voters want Congress and courts to provide constitutional checks on Trump's power, rather than lawmakers passively acquiescing to market-rattling trade wars, unlawful deportations, and all of the assorted chaos of the past 101 days.
Mentioning the deportations, Jonathan, and we'll have Molly talk more about this, but just think about it. Joe Rogan saying talking about this issue specifically, saying we don't want to be the monsters. Yeah. Joe Rogan said that. Yeah. That it's monstrous what is happening. To have no due process, to have these people being deported to El Salvador, to a prison that basically slowly kills people, if you read the reporting as to what happens there. And even the leader of El Salvador, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator, he seems to have more respect for our Constitution and due process. So Joe Rogan and Bukele, I mean, I don't know. At some point, maybe somebody might want to get a little bit of an idea here that maybe this isn't working for them.
And we are seeing, I mean, it's not just Joe Rogan. Ann Coulter has spoken out against some of this due process. We just played the pretty Trump-friendly podcast with the tough marks they're giving the president. So, Molly, but you do see, as you just wrote, some signs of hope. And it has been striking. It hasn't gotten the media attention as the protests did in 2017. Right. And they were slower to start, but they have picked up. We've seen them recently. And we're seeing the poll after poll suggests Americans just don't like what they're seeing.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about these polls is that there's a lot of anger in these polls towards Congress, too, because they want Congress to do more.
Right.
Which I think is really important, because Congress does have power on the tariffs. So does the Supreme Court, right? They can take this power back. This is not Trump's power. This was made with this. He took an emergency action. He said it was an emergency. It is clearly not an emergency. And so I do think that the sort of anger that we hear in this polling is really about constituents wanting their congressional representatives to do more for them.
So, Claire, doesn't it work this way for Republicans in Congress if they start seeing dissension among the far-right constituents that they represent, that perhaps they would grow something, like grow a pair? I mean, like, wouldn't they push back on Trump?
I love that you just said that, Mika. Mika just said grow a pair.
We heard it.
They really need to.
Can I want to needle point that on a pillow. Mika says Congress grow a pair. Here's the thing.
Pay for this.
There are going to be some real political consequences down the line, and don't think these members of Congress don't know it. And they're all very nervous. I'm talking to my former colleagues. There is some really shaky folks now that see what's happening, especially around the economy. And as they begin to roll out the budget that they're proposing and the tax cut bill that they're going to try to ram through under a bare majority in the Senate, all of those things are going to add to this, because it's going to highlight that no one's paying attention to the very thing that people who made the decision to make Trump president, that 15% that swung from the Democratic presidential candidate to the Republican presidential candidate in this election, that 15% that is very shaky on Trump, they are not going to accept the billionaires getting a big tax cut while they're paying more for everything if they can get it. So I think there is some real nervousness there. Now, they're still more nervous of Elon Musk's money and Trump's megaphone. They are more nervous about that. But it is beginning to be something that's making them very uncomfortable, because they remember what the Tea Party did in 2010. And the seats that they took. So, buckle up, because the next year is going to be rough for the Republicans in Congress if they don't finally assert themselves and do what the Constitution and the Founding Fathers expected them to do.
We know if past this prologue, Republicans will remain silent. But we see polls, they could suffer a significant political penalty if they do.